We are Venom.
Everyone agrees it's a unique challenge to make a Venom movie without Spider-Man. And this movie has lots of problems, but they're not all because Spider-Man's not in it. A lot of it is just general sloppiness. I'll tell you all about it, but first, please subscribe to GameSpot Universe for more reviews and breakdowns of the entertainment that you love. Here's an example. The movie starts out with some symbiotes escaping the custody of the Life Foundation. One of them infects this woman in a marketplace in Malaysia and kills a bunch of people. And then the movie gets over to Eddie Brock's story in San Francisco. There is a 6-month time jump, and then it goes back to the story of the symbiote that's infected the woman, who has, in the course of 6 months, just made it to the airport to try to get to San Francisco. What is that symbiote doing for 6 months? Is it pretending to be somebody's grandma? Is it on a killing spree? There's no explanation, and that's just a plot hole, and not one that can be attributed to making a Venom movie without Spider-Man or just like the general cheesiness of Venom as a character. It's just sloppiness. That said, the lack of Spider-Man in this movie does actually cause its own problems. It's a different set of problems. Venom's entire motivation in the comics is that Venom hates Spider-Man and Eddie Brock hates Spider-Man, and so they team up and they have this obsession. And so if you're gonna do this movie without Spider-Man, you need to replace Spider-Man with some other common goal for the two of them. But it doesn't. Instead, the movie kind of tries to paint them as like Breakfast Club style lovable losers. Like there's literally probably the worst line in the movie is Venom says to Eddie, "On my planet, I'm kind of a loser like you." And that's the entire motivation for why Venom like stays on Earth, betrays his entire species, etc., etc. It's probably the biggest laugh in the movie, but I don't think that that's a good thing. I think it's bad. Speaking of the humor, Venom as a movie is surprisingly funny, and it's mostly in the weird stuff that the symbiote says to Eddie, usually when he thinks that he's being cowardly or embarrassing. Like at one point, Eddie like surrenders to the cops and Venom goes, no, you're making us look bad. And it's like, that's pretty good. At another point, Eddie like, he doesn't wanna, he takes the elevator instead of jumping out of the top of a skyscraper, and Venom calls him a which is like it's just juvenile and dumb, and it's funny and it works and you laugh in the moment. But the bigger problem is like, to me the bigger question is, why does Venom talk like a frat bro? Like, why is this his personality? He's an alien parasite from space, and he like hurls childish insults at Eddie and like belittles him like a bully. It's just really weird. And like, to extrapolate that further, why does Venom look the way that he looks? Like, I understand that it was a character that was like designed in the 90s and it just looks like extreme because that's what was cool, but like within the context of a story, the symbiotes are black, goopy, you know what I mean? Like, they're parasites. When they form up, why do they have like big eyes and sharp teeth? It's never so much as acknowledged, much less explained. On the plus side, I think Venom actually looks pretty good. Venom actually looks like Venom in this movie, unlike, say, Spider-Man 3, which is a whole other kind of hot garbage. But the effects, although they're kind of inconsistent, I think they're really creative, and I really like the way that they represent the symbiotes on the screen. Like, you know, when the teeth and the face come up over Eddie's face, that stuff, it looks really cool. Even if it's a little bit cheesy, a little bit ganky CGI. Venom also comes off as like really powerful, but still graceful. Like, it's just a good representation of the character. There's also some really cool fight scenes later on where it's, you know, symbiote versus symbiote, and Eddie versus Dr. Carlton Drake, Riz Ahmed's character, where Eddie and Dr. Drake are punching each other while the symbiotes are ripping at each other, and there's parts where they're trying to rip each other out of their like, it's like this alien body armor, it's all goopy. It's really weird, and it's unique to this movie. Unfortunately, we do need to talk about Tom Hardy, because I'm like a fan of Mad Max and you know, The Revenant, that was good. But like, he's just becoming increasingly baffling to me, and he is not good in this movie. He's doing like some kind of caricature of like a New York City cab driver, but mixed with all this like weird muttering under his breath. and it doesn't make any, like, I don't understand the character that he's trying to do with Eddie Brock. Besides that, Brock is also not a likable character. He he's thoughtless, like he's not a good journalist. He uses his girlfriend, Michelle Williams' character, in this terrible scheme, this like gotcha journalism thing that gets them both fired, and then it never occurs to him to apologize until later in the movie when Venom, for some reason, who's like turned into his therapist by this point, is like, you should apologize to your girlfriend. It's like, what the hell is happening? So Brock isn't a good character, and Tom Hardy's performance doesn't make up for it in any way. So it's just like, who are we supposed to root for in this movie? Michelle Williams is fine as Eddie's girlfriend, and she's kind of sidelined. She doesn't really get to do much. And their whole relationship kind of doesn't make sense because they have zero chemistry. Even weirder is she gets this new boyfriend who's like a doctor, and Eddie like forces himself back into their lives because he's kind of stalking her. And then her new boyfriend, who's played by Reed Scott, like weirdly sympathizes with Eddie and like tries to help him and like gives him all these MRI screenings, even after Eddie like becomes increasingly more and more insane. Like at one point they're on a date and he like shows up at the restaurant and just starts grabbing people's food off their tables and like screaming and yelling and attacking people. And he like climbs into a lobster tank and like grabs a lobster and just starts eating a live lobster. And even then they're like, we need to get you to the hospital. No, don't call the cops. It's like, what? That, call the cops. This is like way beyond what's cool. And also, he's her ex-boyfriend. None of the character interactions or motivations make any sense. Riz Ahmed is okay. I generally like him as an actor. He plays Dr. Carlton Drake, who is the villain. But he's like an old school superhero movie, like bad one-dimensional villain. Like his whole thing is that humanity is gonna be dead because of climate change, which like, what is that about, right? Like the Predator had the same thing. It's actually about climate change. Like I truly don't understand why climate change is the new like catch-all motivation for superhero, for villains. Whatever. But so he's Carlton Drake, and it's like just kind of like a one-note villain. It's like he does a good job, but it's just not an interesting character. Actually, the only character who really experiences any kind of growth or development at all is the one played by Jenny Slate. She plays a scientist who works for the Life Foundation. I love Jenny Slate. I'm a huge Jenny Slate fan, and she's kind of the best character in the movie, although predictably underused. Venom has all the ingredients of a decent superhero movie like 10 or 15 years ago. Honestly, it feels like a movie that came before the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like we've come to expect more from comic book adaptations, from superhero movies. It's like the CGI is not great. All the characters are one-dimensional and flimsy. It's tonally inconsistent. It has like that terrible forced edginess and really awkward humor. The female characters are all sidelined, and it even has cringeworthy licensed musical cues. Some of that can maybe be attributed to the fact that this movie has been in development since around 2008 at least, but not all of it. Some of it is just general sloppy, bad filmmaking, and we've come to expect more from our comic book adaptations. There are 3 credited writers on this movie, and not one of those people could come up with a plausible motivation for Venom. That's wild. Here's what's good about Venom. It's surprisingly funny, if that's what you're looking for. I think some of the visual effects and some of the action are really creative. Venom actually looks like Venom, and for that reason, it's better than Spider-Man 3. It's better than Spider-Man 3. Here's what's not good. The tone is all over the place. The quality of the CGI and the visual effects are all over the place. The humor is awkward. All of the characters are shallow, one-note, uninteresting, and unlikable. Tom Hardy's entire performance is just so strange. It's so baffling. I don't understand what he was going for. Let's see. Venom as a concept, as an entire character, doesn't make any sense. I don't understand why Venom is the way that he is, why he talks like a frat boy, why he looks like a demon. And the movie makes absolutely no effort to explain it. Speaking of Venom making little sense as a character, we're gonna do a little epilogue here to talk about the post-credits scenes. So if you don't wanna be spoiled and you wanna go see the movie, do that first and then come back, turn the video off. Ready? Okay, it's a doozy because I looked at the IMDb today and Woody Harrelson is credited in this movie, but does not appear in the movie until the post-credits scene, or more accurately, the mid-credits scene, because Eddie Brock, who is now a journalist again by the end of the movie, shows up at this institution or jail or whatever it is. He approaches this like Silence of the Lambs style cage, and inside is none other than Woody Harrelson wearing a Ronald McDonald wig. And he's apparently Carnage, but not really, because he just has one line where he says, when I get out of, sorry. He says, when I get out of here, there's gonna be carnage. It's so bad. I can't believe it. Okay, there's technically 2 post-credit scenes, because there is one other thing tacked on at the very end of the credits, and it's just a clip from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. That has nothing to do with the rest of the movie. It literally says, meanwhile, in another universe, and then it just plays an entire scene from Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Maybe because it's supposed to remind us what an actual good movie looks like. I have no idea. It's like the rest of this movie, it is f***ing weird. That's it. Okay, well, thanks for watching, and if you still want to go see Venom anyway, you know, go ahead and let us know in the comments what you thought. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Rogue Cheddar, and good luck.